No one wanted this aggressive bull, until a lost boy gave it a name. The snort was deep and guttural, echoing off the rotted wood and rusted fencing like a warning drum. Wyatt Bramble froze mid-step. His shoes, thin rubber-soled things full of holes, crunched against the gravel-strewn ground as he leaned just slightly toward the heavy gate. The bars bent and scarred as though something inside had tried to tear its way out. The stench of hay, manure, and rust was thick in the air, but it was the sound that held him still, that low, furious breath like a furnace being stoked. He moved closer, ignoring the heat that shimmered off the cracked concrete around him. Behind the gate stood a massive black bull, its muscles rigid beneath a hide riddled with scrapes and dried mud. One horn curved sharply, the other twisted unnaturally, as if it had once broken and never healed right. Its eyes burned a shade too red, not from fury alone, but from something older, something deeper. The yellow tag in its left ear read, "Number 416, but Wyatt saw no number. He saw loneliness, pain. He saw himself. Wyatt was thin, 12 years old but small for his age. His shirt stuck to his back with sweat, and the straps of his worn backpack had nearly frayed apart. The granola bar inside had long since melted, forgotten. His lips were dry, cracked, but he barely noticed. His eyes stayed locked with the bull's. And then, a voice, sharp, gruff, cut through the heat. "Hey, step back!" a man shouted. Wyatt flinched as the heavy clomp of boots approached. A tall man in a dusty flannel shirt and jeans came into view, his jaw set hard beneath a gray-streaked beard. He looked like he hadn't slept well in years. His name, though Wyatt didn't know it yet, was Tucker Lorne. "That thing'll charge a train if you let it," Tucker said, slowing as he neared the boy. He didn't sound angry, more tired than anything else, like someone who'd said the same warning too many times without being heard. Wyatt didn't back away. Instead, he stood still, watching the bull with something strange in his eyes, not fear, but familiarity. "He's not angry," Wyatt said quietly. "He's scared." Tucker frowned. "You don't know bulls, kid." Wyatt didn't answer. The bull's chest rose and fell in heavy breaths. His hooves shifted in the dirt, but not forward. Not yet. "What's his name?" Wyatt asked. Tucker exhaled slowly, then jerked his head toward a clipboard nailed to the fence post. "Don't have one, just a number. 416. We don't name the ones headed for the block." Wyatt looked back at the bull and whispered, "You're not a number. You're just lost." Then he added, more to himself than to anyone else, "I'll call you Cole." Tucker muttered something under his breath and walked off, boots crunching toward the barn. Wyatt didn't follow. He knelt beside the gate, watching Cole in silence as the bull slowly lowered his massive head, nostrils flaring. They stayed that way for a long time, neither moving, neither needing to speak. That night, when the sky turned dark and the lights of Grey Ridge faded into stillness, Wyatt didn't go to the alley where he'd been sleeping the past 2 days. He returned to the livestock yard. He found a horse blanket half covered in dust, curled beside the pen, and laid it out beneath the stars. The concrete was hard, but he didn't care. The sounds of night echoed around him, crickets, the creak of old boards, and the occasional grunt from Cole. But Wyatt slept better than he had in weeks. Morning came early. The sun rose heavy, and the flies were worse than ever. But when Wyatt stirred, stiff and sore, he found Cole still watching him, not angrily, not threatening, just watching. By the 3rd day, Wyatt had started cleaning the yard. He didn't ask permission. He grabbed a shovel leaning against the wall and began scraping the pens, tossing out spoiled hay, even mending a broken gate latch using an old wire he found. It was on the 5th morning that Tucker spoke to him again, hands on his hips, face unreadable. "You staying here now?" he asked. Wyatt didn't answer. He just nodded. Tucker scratched his chin. "Name's Tucker, Tucker Lorne. I manage this place. Don't pay much, but if you're cleaning stalls, might as well make it official." "I'm Wyatt," the boy replied. "You eat?" Wyatt hesitated. "Yesterday." Tucker sighed. "Come on, I'll get you something." They walked to the small break room behind the barn, where Tucker poured the boy a bowl of cereal and handed him a bruised apple. Wyatt ate in silence, eyes darting toward the window that looked out toward Cole's pen. "You like that bull?" Tucker asked. I don't like him, Wyatt said, chewing. I know him. Tucker's brow raised. That so? Wyatt nodded. He's just different, doesn't trust anybody. Tucker leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. He's dangerous, Wyatt. He nearly killed a ranch hand 3 weeks ago. Bart wants him gone by Friday. Wyatt's spoon stopped midair. Gone? Meat auction, Tucker said plainly. No one'll take him, not even for scrap. Wyatt looked out the window again. He's not like that with me. That's what makes it strange. That afternoon, Bart Crenshaw arrived. Broad-shouldered, sun-leathered, and sharp-eyed, Bart owned the livestock yard. He stepped out of his red truck, spit into the dirt, and scanned the pens. His eyes landed on Wyatt. That the kid? He asked Tucker. Yeah, says his name's Wyatt. Been here a week. He doesn't belong here. He's working harder than half the hands I've hired. Bart walked toward Cole's pen, squinting as the bull stepped forward, calm but alert. Wyatt stood beside him, one hand resting on the gate. He named it, Tucker added. Bart raised an eyebrow. Named it? Calls him Cole. Bart looked at the bull, then at the boy. Whatever you're doing, kid, it won't last, he said gruffly. These animals break people who get too close. He's already broken, Wyatt said, voice quiet but firm. Bart studied the boy for a long moment, then grunted. Fine, he can stay, but he works. I don't feed freeloaders. Wyatt nodded. Bart turned to Tucker. But the bull's still out Friday. No changing that. Tucker looked at Wyatt but said nothing. In the days that followed, Wyatt and Cole grew closer. The bull would lean his head into the gate when Wyatt approached. He responded to his voice. Once, when a loud engine backfired near the lot, Cole reared up and bellowed, but Wyatt calmed him within seconds, whispering the same phrase again and again. You're safe. I got you. Tucker noticed everything, and quietly, so did Bart. But Bart never mentioned the call he got late one night, never mentioned the voice on the other end saying, That bull's still alive? You said he was gone. He didn't say that the paperwork on Cole wasn't just incomplete, it was forged, or that he'd paid someone to erase the serial records connecting Cole to something far worse than a failed auction. Cole wasn't just aggressive. He had a history, one that Bart had hoped would stay buried. Wyatt didn't know any of that. All he knew was the bull who stopped growling when he spoke. The bull who looked at him not like prey, but like a reflection. He began spending nights at the pen again, blanket wrapped around him, the air thick with summer heat. Townsfolk began whispering. A boy with no home, living beside a monster? They shook their heads at him from across the street, called him crazy. But Wyatt didn't care. For the first time in years, he wasn't invisible. Cole was his only friend, and for the first time in years, he felt seen. What no one knew, not even Wyatt, was that Bart wasn't telling the full truth about where Cole came from, or why the bull flinched at the sound of diesel engines. The bull didn't flinch when Wyatt approached with the rake, not anymore. Cole stood still, his broad frame casting a long shadow over the feeding lane as Wyatt worked with quick, practiced motions, sweeping the old hay and manure into a pile. The morning sun bled orange across the sky, painting the worn-out wooden fences of Gray Ridge's livestock yard with long fingers of light. Sweat beaded on Wyatt's brow, but he didn't stop. Each morning was the same. Clean, feed, talk. It had become a rhythm, a kind of shared language between boy and bull. You get the better end of this deal, you know, Wyatt muttered, glancing at Cole with a crooked smile. The bull exhaled through his wide nostrils, a puff of steam in the early chill. Wyatt reached forward, slow and deliberate, pressing his palm gently against Cole's forehead. The bull didn't move. His eyes fluttered closed. It lasted only a moment, but it was enough. Enough to prove that the anger was fading, that something buried deep inside was beginning to trust again. Tucker Lorne stood by the barn, arms folded, watching the scene in silence. The wind tousled his graying hair, and his eyes narrowed not in suspicion, but in wonder. It didn't make sense. Cole had been violent, unpredictable. But now, under the guidance of a runaway kid, he had changed. Tucker rubbed his chin and muttered, "That's no ordinary bond." Later that evening, as the orange haze gave way to the blue dusk, Tucker leaned against a post beside Bart Crenshaw's truck. Bart had come to check on the bull's condition, clipboard in hand, chewing on a toothpick as always. Tucker took a breath and spoke low. "That bull listens to the boy," he said. "Stops on command, lets him touch him." Bart didn't even glance up from his clipboard. "Won't matter. 1 week left." Tucker frowned. "You sure you want to let him go?" Bart's jaw tightened. "I'm sure." But Bart wasn't as calm as he looked. Hours earlier, he had received a letter in a sealed envelope. No return address, only a smudged postmark from the South. He'd opened it inside his office and read the single sentence scrawled across the page in shaky ink. "Heard you still got one of Haldor's beasts. People remember." Bart hadn't hesitated. He'd struck a match and let the letter curl into ashes over a tin tray. Cole wasn't just any bull. He was a survivor from the underground circuits run by Mason Haldor, a name whispered in shadows across the southern territories. Haldor had bred bulls not for work, but for war, for blood. Cole had been the prizefighter, conditioned through shock, starvation, and torment. When the government cracked down, the operation scattered, but a few animals disappeared from the books. Bart had bought Cole off record from a hauler who wanted no questions asked. Now, someone out there had questions. Bart didn't like questions, but Wyatt, still unaware of the history beneath Cole's hide, focused only on what he could see. Every spare moment he trained. He'd taught Cole to respond to a low whistle, 1 blast for stop, 2 for step back. He practiced hand gestures, standing just beyond the gate, eyes locked with Cole's. Slowly, Cole responded. He moved without fear, without rage. One afternoon, a group of ranch hands gathered by the fence to watch. Word had spread around Gray Ridge. The Bramble Boy had tamed the monster. They laughed, some out of nervousness, some in awe. "The Bramble Boy and the Killer Bull," one man chuckled, nudging another. Wyatt ignored them. He stood in the dirt arena and raised his hand. Cole walked forward, then halted at a sharp whistle. Wyatt gave a second gesture, and the bull circled left, then right. The small crowd quieted. Tucker approached afterward, his face unreadable. "You're turning him into something new," he said. "I'm not changing him," Wyatt replied. "I'm just helping him remember who he was before they broke him." That night, Wyatt stayed late at the yard. The moon was high, casting cold light over the pens. He heard Bart's voice before he saw him, rough and low through the wall of the office. Wyatt crept closer, barefoot on the straw-strewn ground, until he reached the side window. The phone cord was stretched tight between Bart's hand and the receiver. "Pick him up in 2 nights, Bart said. "No questions. Cash only." Wyatt's heart thudded in his chest. "No, I don't care if it's after hours. Just get him off my property. The boy? He won't be a problem." Wyatt slipped back into the shadows, chest tight, mind racing. He couldn't sleep, couldn't think straight. But as dawn approached, he knew what he had to do. He waited until Tucker left his office for morning rounds. Then Wyatt snuck inside, closed the door behind him, and began searching. The drawer beneath the desk was locked, but the key was taped beneath the table. Tucker wasn't careless, he just hadn't expected to be stolen from by a child he trusted. Inside the drawer were registry papers, animal files, transport logs. Wyatt flipped through the folders until he found Cole's. His fingers trembled as he read, "Name blank, tag number 416, origin listed as private breeder, details unknown." But behind the first page was another, half-torn, listing an older serial number and a different breeder's name, Mason Haldor. Wyatt snapped a photo with the borrowed flip phone Tucker had given him a week earlier in case of emergencies. This was one. He stepped out into the morning light, guilt weighing heavy on his shoulders. He found Tucker outside, brushing down a mule. "I need to talk to you," Wyatt said. Tucker turned, brushing sweat from his forehead. "Everything all right?" Wyatt hesitated. "Number I heard Bart last night. He's selling coal. Off the books." Tucker's eyes darkened. "To who?" "I don't know. But it's not legal." Wyatt handed him the photo. Tucker's brow furrowed as he stared at the name. "Mason Haldor," he murmured. "I haven't heard that name in years." "You knew about him?" "I knew of him," Tucker said. "Ran the worst bullfights in 5 counties. He disappeared when the law came down, but some say a few of his animals vanished. You think this bull, Cole, is one of them? He is one of them, Wyatt said, and Bart knows it. Tucker folded the photo and shoved it in his pocket. His jaw clenched. You've got till sunset tomorrow, son, he said quietly. After that, Bart won't listen to anyone. Wyatt stared up at him. What do I do? You do what you think is right. So Wyatt made his decision. The next morning, he left before dawn, hoodie pulled tight over his head, shoes slapping the gravel road. He passed closed storefronts, quiet porches, and dusty fences until he reached the sheriff's station at the far end of town. He stood outside for a full minute, fists clenched, heart pounding. He hadn't been in a building like this since Everhollow, and the memories clawed at him. Gray walls, clipped voices, the cold scrape of metal chairs. But this was different. He pushed open the door. The bell above chimed. Sheriff Lionel Griggs looked up from his desk, his coffee half full and steaming. A tall man in a faded uniform, Griggs had seen plenty of odd things in Grey Ridge. A 12-year-old boy storming into his office with a photo of an illegal bull registry wasn't the weirdest, but it came close. Morning, Griggs said cautiously. Can I help you? Wyatt swallowed. You need to stop a sale, a bad one. Griggs leaned forward. What kind of sale? Wyatt held up the phone, hands shaking. A bull. His name's Cole. Bart Crenshaw's selling him tomorrow night. No papers, no record. He was part of something illegal. Griggs took the phone, squinting at the image. His eyes narrowed. Mason Haldor, he muttered. That name hasn't crossed my desk in a long time. Wyatt met his gaze. Cole's not dangerous, not anymore. But if he ends up in the wrong hands again, he'll never come back. Griggs sat back, processing. Then he reached for his radio. I'll look into this, son. You did the right thing. And that's when everything changed. You're telling me Bart's trying to sell a fighting bull off the books? Sheriff Lionel Griggs asked, holding the photo in one hand and staring hard at the 12-year-old boy standing in front of his desk. Wyatt Bramble nodded, his fists clenched at his sides. His hair was damp with sweat, and his cheeks were smeared with dirt, but his eyes were clear, fierce, certain. To someone dangerous, he said. I heard him. They're coming tonight. Griggs didn't move for a moment. He sat back slowly, the old chair creaking beneath him, and studied the image again. A bull's registry, a fake origin line, and there, scrawled faintly in faded ink, the name Mason Haldor. Griggs had thought that name was buried. Years ago, he'd helped run surveillance on the Haldor ring from a distance. When the raids went down, he'd read the reports. The animals bred under Haldor weren't raised. They were designed. For blood, for money, for power. Griggs set the paper down and exhaled through his nose. That bull, Cole, you called him? Wyatt nodded again. He's not dangerous now. Not to people who treat him right. The sheriff stood. You sure about this? Yes. Griggs reached for his radio. All right, he muttered. We'll set up a sting. Wyatt's heart beat harder, not with fear, but urgency. I want to help. Griggs looked up. Help? I know Cole. I can tell if something's wrong. If he's scared, if he's going to run. You need me there. That's not how these things usually go, son. I'm not usual. Griggs stared for a long beat. He saw it again, that fire in the boy's eyes. Not just stubbornness, but purpose. You stay out of harm's way. The moment it gets risky, you step back. Understood? Understood. By afternoon, the back lot at Grey Ridge Livestock was being carefully prepped. Griggs coordinated with 2 officers from the Animal Authority Division out of Riverton County, Agent Mace and Agent Corin, both quiet, stern men who looked like they hadn't smiled in years. Tucker arrived just past 4, climbing out of his truck with a grim look on his face. You sure this is going to work? He asked Griggs. We'll know soon enough, Griggs replied. Wyatt stood near Cole's pen, brushing the bull's side with slow, even strokes. Cole's body was tense, his ears twitching at every sound. He could sense something, an edge in the air. Wyatt leaned close and whispered, Don't worry. I won't let them take you. Tucker approached, eyes softening as he watched the boy. He trusts you. Wyatt didn't look up. He's the first one who ever did. The sun began to sink behind the hills as Bart Crenshaw arrived. He didn't know about the trap. Griggs had kept it tight. Just 5 men involved. No leaks. Bart walked across the yard like he owned it, which he did, whistling low and checking his watch. "Where's the kid?" Bart asked, squinting around. "Gone for the day," Tucker lied, arms crossed. "Fine," Bart said. "Should be any time now." Wyatt was already hidden, crouched in the rafters above the main pen, heart hammering so hard it echoed in his ears. From his spot he could see everything. The gate, the shadows beyond the fence, and Cole below, pacing slightly but not panicking. The truck arrived just before 8. A long black vehicle with tinted windows and a dent in the front bumper rolled into the lot. The engine rumbled low like a growl. Wyatt held his breath. The doors opened, and 2 men stepped out. The first was short and stocky, face hidden beneath a cap. The second was taller, with dark, leathery skin and a snake tattoo curling up his neck. Wyatt froze. Jed Carrick. He had seen the name in reports. Griggs had shown him old surveillance photos. Jed had been Mason Haldor's right hand, the man who had handled the animals, who had beaten them into submission. "Same bull?" Jed asked, voice like sandpaper. Bart nodded. "Same one. He's calmer now. Useful, maybe." Jed walked to the pen, studying Cole through the bars. The bull didn't react right away, but when the man stepped closer, something shifted. Cole's ears twitched. His hooves dug slightly into the dirt. His body coiled ever so slightly. "He remembers you," Wyatt whispered to himself, eyes locked on the scene below. "Open the gate," Jed said. Bart hesitated, glancing around the yard. "He's mellowed. The boy worked with him." "I'm not here for lessons," Jed snapped. Bart opened the gate. Cole didn't move. Jed clicked his tongue. "Come on, brute." Cole lowered his head but didn't charge. Instead, he turned his head slightly and looked toward the rafters. Wyatt gave the signal, just a single flick of fingers through the slats. Cole stomped once, then turned, then walked away from the open gate. The pause confused Jed just long enough. "Now!" Griggs shouted from behind the hay bales. Agents Mace and Corrin sprang from their positions, weapons raised. Griggs followed, badge glinting under the floodlights. "Hands in the air!" he barked. Jed reached for something in his coat, but he didn't get far. Cole stepped sideways, blocking the exit path with his massive body. Horn lowered, breath hissing through flared nostrils. The same bull that had once been trained to destroy was now guarding the gate like a sentinel. Jed hesitated, and that was all it took. Agent Mace tackled him to the ground. Corrin cuffed Bart, who stood stunned and silent. Within seconds, it was over. The lot went quiet again. The only sound Cole's steady breathing as he backed away from the commotion. Wyatt climbed down from the rafters, legs trembling. Griggs met him near the pen. "You all right?" the sheriff asked. Wyatt nodded. He knew. Cole knew who that man was. Griggs looked toward the bull. "I believe it." Bart and Jed were loaded into separate cruisers. Charges would follow: unlawful sale, conspiracy, animal cruelty. But for Wyatt, none of that mattered in the moment. He turned to Cole, who was now standing calm, as if the fight had never touched him. "You're safe now," Wyatt whispered. Later that night, Griggs, Tucker, and the agents met in the Barnes office to discuss next steps. Wyatt sat on a hay bale outside, arms wrapped around his knees, too tired to speak. Tucker joined him after a while, lowering himself beside the boy. "He doesn't belong in a facility," Wyatt said quietly. "They'll just put him in some holding cage again. He needs open fields. He needs space." Tucker stared out across the pens. "I've got land," he said, "and the license. Let me keep him, with the boy." Griggs, hearing this from the doorway, folded his arms and considered it. "Only if the bull passes evaluation," he said, "and only if the boy agrees to re-enroll in school, under guardianship." Wyatt looked up. "You mean, live here?" "Under Tucker's watch," Griggs confirmed. "With structure, with rules." Wyatt didn't hesitate. "Yes." Later that night, as the barn lights dimmed and the last of the cars pulled away, Wyatt walked up to Cole's pen. The bull stood at the far end, but when Wyatt called softly, he came forward. For a moment, neither moved. Then Cole nuzzled him, just once. enough to know it wasn't the end. The wind stirred gently across the open pasture, bending the grass in smooth waves beneath the golden rays of a late autumn sun. The sign that once warned danger, aggressive bull, was gone. In its place stood a hand-carved wooden plaque that simply read, "Cole, beloved and free." It was nailed to the gate of Tucker Lorne's front pasture, where the bull now roamed, not caged in steel but surrounded by space and sky. No chains, no threat, just quiet. Wyatt Bramble stood near the fence, one boot resting on the lower rail, a worn denim jacket wrapped tight against the breeze. He was taller now, at least it felt that way, and steadier. 3 months had passed since the sting that changed everything, and every day since, the boy had worked the land like he belonged to it. More than that, he did belong now. He had a routine, a home, a name that meant something. The ranch had changed too. The barn, once cluttered and grimy, was now freshly painted and reorganized. Cole's pen had been widened and fitted with a custom shelter. Even the air seemed different, less heavy. Wyatt brushed a hand along the fence post, watching as Cole walked slowly through the pasture. The bull's body still carried scars, long and faded, but the rage in his eyes had melted into calm. He responded to Wyatt's whistle, to his presence, to his voice. He trusted him completely. Tucker stepped out of the barn, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. "Mail came," he said, holding up a small envelope. Wyatt dropped down from the rail and took it, noticing the neat handwriting on the front. Wyatt Bramble, C.O. Tucker Lorne, Grey Ridge. He hadn't gotten many letters in his life, none personal. He turned the envelope over. A government stamp, no return address. He opened it carefully, unfolded the paper, and began reading. Tucker watched from a few steps away, sensing the shift in the boy's breath. "Something wrong?" Wyatt shook his head slowly. "No," he whispered. "Something right." He handed the letter to Tucker. It was from a man named Thomas Fielding, an agent with the National Animal Welfare Board. Fielding had seen the footage from the sting, the boy and the bull, the confrontation, the calm that followed. And more than that, he had studied the reports after, behavioral notes, progress logs, Wyatt's testimony, Cole's response to trauma. It had sparked something. "I believe this story can become a blueprint," the letter read. "We are forming a new initiative, Companions of Redemption, a program that pairs at-risk youth with rescued animals. We need people who understand what it means to be discarded, to be labeled dangerous, people like you." Tucker handed the letter back, his voice low. "They want you involved?" "More than that," Wyatt said. "They want me to help lead it." A gust of wind blew between them, carrying the scent of hay and earth. For a long moment, neither spoke. Wyatt stared out over the fields again, gaze fixed on the large black figure in the distance. "I used to think I was broken," he said. "Like Cole, that nobody wanted me." Tucker didn't interrupt. "But now I know, we weren't broken, just lost." The next day, Wyatt sat on the edge of his bed, rereading the letter under the morning light pouring through the window. The walls of the room were still plain, but they held life now. Photos of him and Cole, a school schedule, a calendar with appointments for both checkups and livestock care. In the corner sat a science fair project on cattle stress reduction that Wyatt had been working on. His teacher, Mr. Ellison, had been surprised when Wyatt chose to present something tied so closely to his past. But Wyatt wasn't ashamed of where he came from. Not anymore. School had changed, too. The same boys who'd whispered the bull kid in the halls now greeted him by name. Some even came to the ranch after school to see Cole from the safety of the fence. Wyatt didn't mind. He'd learned how to speak with people again, not just animals. Slowly, carefully. That afternoon, Agent Fielding called. His voice was older than Wyatt had imagined, measured and kind. "We'll be piloting in 2 counties, small numbers. But if it works—" "It will work," Wyatt said, quiet but firm. Fielding chuckled. "I believe that." They arranged for Wyatt to speak at a small conference the following month. Nothing large, just a group of educators, therapists, and ranchers who were skeptical but open. Wyatt would tell Cole's story, not from the lens of violence or spectacle, but from transformation. Redemption. That night, Wyatt sat in the pasture with Cole. The sun had slipped low, a brilliant orange bleeding across the sky like a fire too soft to burn. Cole stood beside him, munching lazily on fresh grass. "You saved me," Wyatt said. Cole snorted gently. "Not just from Bart or Jed. You saved me from becoming what they said I'd be." He ran his hand along Cole's horn, careful not to press too hard. The bone was smooth now, no longer chipped or cracked. "They called you unfit," Wyatt whispered. "But they didn't know your name." The bull's massive body leaned slightly into his touch, a warm weight against the cooling wind. Wyatt smiled, folding the letter into his pocket. "They do now.